Well, welcome everyone to the first episode of Faith in Extraordinary Times, CSW's new online event series to connect you with inspiring people of faith working to bring religious freedom around the world. I'm Dave Mance, I'm Head of Campaigns at CSW, and my guest today is Benedict Rogers, human rights activist and journalist, and of course, East Asia team leader at CSW. Ben is author of 6 books, not 5, as it says on his Wikipedia page, and he's co-founder and deputy chairman of the Conservative Party's Human Rights Commission and founder of Hong Kong Watch. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Dave. Great to be with you.
So, Ben, perhaps you could start just by telling us a little bit about how you came to work for CSW and how long you've been working here.
Yeah, so I've been involved with CSW for astonishingly 26 years. I first got involved when I was a student at university, and I heard a speaker from CSW who really inspired me. And then after I graduated, I went to Hong Kong, lived there for 5 years, and in my spare time there, set up CSW in Hong Kong, was also on the board of CSW, and then came full-time onto the staff about 16 years ago. And have been full-time ever since.
I'm sure I speak for everyone joining us in saying that no one could ever guess someone looking so young as you would have worked at CSW for that long.
Yes, I started early. I started at a young age, I guess.
So then today we're going to focus on China and the situation there. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit, what's the situation currently in terms of religious freedom in China?
The situation right now is that China is facing the most severe crackdown on religious freedom really since the Cultural Revolution. The Communist Party of China has always been a repressive regime, and particularly repressive towards religion. But there have been periods in the last couple of decades where there was a bit more relaxation, a bit more space for religion. But right now, both in terms of the destruction of churches and crosses, the closure of churches, the imprisonment of pastors, continued persecution of groups like the Falun Gong movement, and especially the incarceration of at least 1 million, maybe as many as 3 million Uyghur Muslims in prison camps in Xinjiang in the west of the country. So it is the worst situation for religious freedom since the Cultural Revolution.
And obviously where we are right now, here in the UK, for example, we're currently on lockdown. That's kind of why we're doing these events. And I'm sure it's a situation wherever people are watching, we're all affected by the coronavirus. How has that impacted things in China?
It's had a significant impact, both in terms of, as is the case for all of us here and in many countries, it's been much more difficult for churches in China to meet, for Christians to gather. I don't think they had quite the same lockdown throughout the country as we have now, but nevertheless, it's much more difficult for Christians to gather. But even more seriously, I think there's a particular concern for prisoners of conscience in China's prisons, whether they are Christians, people of other faiths, human rights lawyers who've been defending Christians and others, and of course especially the Uyghurs in the prison camps in Xinjiang, where the conditions, even in normal times, are really dire in terms of poor sanitation, no healthcare, overcrowding. So you can imagine how easy and how dangerous those places, the prisons, are for the coronavirus to spread and really cause a lot of suffering.
And on that note, Ben, because obviously we're all about, our advocacy is people like you, specialists speaking, lobbying those in power. But obviously a lot of our work is ordinary folks like me wanting to speak up. What action can we practically take?
Well, first of all, I would encourage people to join our new campaign, particularly focused on the Uyghurs. We just yesterday released a major new report on religious freedom in China, and accompanying that, we have a campaign encouraging people to write to or email their MP, and especially people who are like ourselves, working from home or staying at home. Hopefully, they have a bit more time to do something like that. So, would encourage people to write to their MP, and they can look at our website for the details. Obviously, I would encourage people to pray for China. But I think the other really important thing is that it's very easy and very understandable at the current time that our governments and our media and general public are totally focused on the coronavirus pandemic, and that's understandable. But I would encourage people to keep awareness going about what's happening in China through social media, through talking to people that you're in touch with, through telling others, so that it doesn't disappear from the agenda. And particularly when we come out of this coronavirus pandemic, that people are informed and able to turn their attention to the human rights situation in China.
Yeah, that's right. So important. Obviously, we're talking, and speaking about religious freedom in China, it can be, a lot of tough news to digest. Perhaps you could share, is there something in particular in your work in China recently that has encouraged you?
Yes. I mean, the news from China is generally extremely concerning and in some ways depressing. But I think the two things that have encouraged me, one is the fact that Christians and indeed others in China have not given up. There are amazing stories of Christians who continue to worship, who pastors who continue to speak out. There was a group of, I think, about 40 pastors last year who signed a letter criticizing the Chinese regime's new regulations on religion. So people, despite the consequences, they know, they've seen their colleagues and friends going to jail. But despite that, they continue to speak out. Some of the lawyers that continue to defend cases, even though many lawyers have disappeared or been jailed. So that's really encouraging, the fact that people continue to do courageous work despite the consequences. I think one other thing that is also encouraging, just in the last few days, you may have seen in the media, there's a real change in the way the British government appears to be thinking about China, brought on because of the coronavirus. And whatever the reasons behind that, the fact that government ministers and senior MPs are talking about the need to reevaluate our relationship with China and how we engage with the regime in China is really welcome. I mean, I've been saying that for years. It seems this coronavirus may have woken people up to the dangers of the Communist Party of China.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That is, and it is incredible, those stories of, I'm always, even though like you, I work in this with this every day, I never stop being absolutely bowled over by the courage of people like those, just speaking about the human rights lawyers in China and the church leaders who just continue to speak out, even sometimes after they've been imprisoned, tortured for several years, and yet some still would come out of that and go right back to doing the thing that put them in prison in the first place. It is just really quite amazing and inspiring. Let me just apologize for anyone who can hear my children singing in the next room. Adds a bit of authenticity to this anyway.
Absolutely.
So yes, I guess speaking about difficult times, so the kind of wilderness seasons of life that people of faith who are speaking out and suffer for that, or even for us ourselves, going through what is quite a testing season for everyone, I think, right now. What have you particularly learned about faith in difficult times through your work?
I think a number of things. Firstly, the real value and importance, central importance of prayer. Sorry, excuse me. um, I think prayer is. We always say in CSW that it's our most important weapon, our most important advocacy tool. And obviously, as a staff, in normal times, we pray every day and together in the office. In this new season, we're praying together online several times a week. And so I think the importance of prayer collectively, but also individually, is so important. But I also think, balanced with that, actually having a sense of humor is really important. The kind of issues that we engage with are very heavy issues, and if we didn't have a sense of humor, it would be very easy to lose hope, to get depressed, to go mad. And maybe some of us are already a little bit mad, but I think having a sense of humor and being able to see the lighter side of life, even in some very dark times, is really important.
Yeah, and on that, like, how do you sort of keep working in this area and not, because you, like you said, you've been working in this area for what was it, 22 years or 20 something years anyway. I just wonder, how do you actually keep going personally through over such, with such hard work over such a long amount of time?
I think in addition to the things I've mentioned, prayer and a sense of humor, I think the example of the people that I work with in the field, in the countries that I focus on, really keeps me going. I see their, as we talked a few moments ago, we see their courage and dedication, not only in China, but in the other countries that I focus on, Burma, Indonesia, even North Korea, although I don't have, I'm not able to have contact with people inside North Korea, but people who've escaped. Their courage and dedication really inspires me, and I kind of think, well, if they don't give up, what excuse have I for giving up? But I think the other thing that keeps me going as well is the lessons of history, the fact that no repressive regime lasts forever, and sometimes things change when we don't necessarily expect them to. So, I mean, the obvious examples, of course, are the Soviet Union, the end of apartheid in South Africa. But even more personally, I really the first human rights issue that I took up in a very deep way was the situation of East Timor, a tiny country just off the coast of Australia that had been very brutally occupied and repressed by Indonesia. And I'll never forget, I'll just share briefly, I'll never forget being at East Timor's independence ceremony in 2002, and standing next to a Catholic priest who was the first East Timorese to be exiled from his country 25 years previously. And as the new nation was born, I asked him whether he ever believed he would live to see this day. And he said, yes, I did. He said, throughout our struggle, people said to me, you're fighting a losing battle. Your East Timor will never be free. Indonesia will never let you go. The world will never help you. But he said, we had one thing that those people did not know about, and that was faith. He said, this was a victory of faith. And as he said those words, the clock struck midnight, the sky lit up with fireworks, and the national anthem was sung. So I always hold on to that memory that a situation that seemingly is impossible can change dramatically, and that gives me hope.
Yeah, that is amazing, actually. I'd never actually thought about that. But yeah, just thinking on all the amazing things that God's already done in the past, on those places where it looked completely hopeless, and then, yeah, bringing that into our prayers and our work now. So really, my last question, Ben, which I really want to ask to everyone that we speak to through this series, is really just sharing with everyone, what is one moment, perhaps one encounter with God in your life that transformed your faith?
Yes, I mean, there are many that I could think of, but the particular one that I thought I would share happened actually when I was in East Timor on one of my visits there in about 2002. And I remember it was just after it was around 2000 actually, and it was just after the referendum in East Timor where there'd been a huge amount of bloodshed, many people killed, most of the infrastructure of the country destroyed by the Indonesian military. And I remember looking at the needs of the people there, and they were such practical, physical needs, houses needing to be rebuilt, the sick needing treatment, and so on. And I thought, and I asked God, why have you brought me here? Because I'm very lacking in practical skills. I can't help with construction or DIY to rebuild buildings. I'm not a doctor. I can't, help the sick. I know nothing about agriculture, which is what people primarily are working in there and needed help with. So I thought, why am I here? What can I do to help people? And I just had these words in my mind: I have given you a voice and a pen, and those are your tools. And I've given other people a medical kit or a set of construction tools, and those are their tools, but your tools are your pen and your voice, and I want you to use them for those who are suffering. And I've always held on to that my vocation as an advocate is to speak out, whether that's as we're doing now, briefing policymakers or, or writing articles and reports. So using my pen and my voice as my tools. And just accompanying that, at that same moment, I was drawn to the words of Isaiah 58, verses 6 to 12, which says that the type of fasting that we should choose is to loosen the chains of injustice and speak up for the oppressed. Isaiah chapter 58, 6 to 12. And that really transformed my outlook and made me convinced that my calling is to do what I'm doing.
Amazing. Thanks, Ben. I think that's really what I want to draw out of this for all of us through this series is it's so easy for us to take for granted the kind of religious freedom that we have, and it's easy to forget that without the religious freedom we enjoy here, you wouldn't have been able to have that amazing experience. You wouldn't have access to the Bible and people to inspire you and all those things. And I just think it's so important to keep coming back to that as we're, like you said, despite what's going on at the moment, just to keep in mind actually these issues, particularly for us of religious freedom, they continue regardless of the coronavirus, and to just keep in mind the freedom that we enjoy and keep speaking up to make sure that everyone enjoys that.
Absolutely.
So that brings us kind of to the end of our time. So thanks so much, Ben, for doing this with me and making the time for us all. And this is just the start of this new series. So next week, we're going to speak with Nehemiah Christie, who's a human rights defender in India, in South India. And he's going to share a bit about the situation there with the recent tensions around religious groups in the past few months, and also, of course, the impact that coronavirus is having there. Just a quick reminder that for all those of you who are kind of watching online right now, like Ben said, you can take action right now and join our campaign, which is focusing on China and particularly those in re-education camps in Xinjiang. You can join the campaign and speak out and really say, we need to protect those people and close the camps and make sure that the virus doesn't spread there. So to take action, just simply go to our website, csw.org.uk, and if you go to csw.org.uk/campaigns, you can get to it there, or simply click on Get Involved and Campaigns. We'd love to have you speak out. You can email your MP, you can write a letter if you have a bit more time, as Ben said, and we really appreciate you getting involved in that way. All right. Thank you again, Ben.
you. Great.
And thanks everyone for joining.